Hello, my name is Joyce DeBoer and I'm a bat ambassador with the Kootenai Community Bat Project. I have been a bat ambassador here in Golden, BC for about a decade, and during that time a fellow bat ambassador, now retired, and I produced a number of props which we carry around in a couple of Rubbermaid totes to our various presentations. And I'd like to show them to you and hope that they inspire you to create your own props or imitate ours, and it will help you engage your audience as you present about bats and their role in our ecology. When I began as a bat ambassador, our focus was primarily on schools, and especially on the elementary school age group. And that's where this idea came from. This bat mask has entertained children and adults, as it turns out, for all this time. In fact, I have 3 of these. I can change them up depending on what I'm wearing. I'll show you the full costume right now in a photo. If you're interested in a video to explain how to make these sturdy hats, I'll place it up in the picture over here. One set of props that we found particularly useful was a series of bat-shaped pieces of landscape cloth, gray landscape cloth in this case, and each represents the length of the wings accurately. So this is a fruit bat, and the weight. And although in this case the weights have been removed, we had 2 weights in here that approximated their actual weight. So there's no detail on these at all, but they do, when you hold them out, they do impress, because this is the size of these bats and the Macrochiroptera. But then we had a number that are closer to home. So this is a hoary bat, and it has a couple of washers in the back to approximate the weight. And so people can pick it up and they can look at how big or how small the bats are and what their weight might be. And that's very helpful. At the same time, we pass around pictures that show the bats that we are showing. This is a vampire bat. That's always a popular one. And the bumblebee bat. And each of these are represented as well with, in this case, a coin. So this is the bumblebee bat, to show it fully extended, and it has a penny in the back. And many children will see that penny, and that will be a distraction. So we have to watch that little brown bat. I believe we've already seen this one. This might be the vampire bat. I can't remember quite. But it works with both children and adults, and it's a good way to begin the workshop as well, or at some point describe how big bats actually are. We also have a number of tools that were given to us through the Kootenai Community Bat Project. This is a Eumamyotis, an unfortunately dead and dried one, but it also shows just how small these animals are. This is a little myotis pup, and again, it's so very small, and although it's dead and desiccated, it does help to give you an opportunity to talk about how small these animals really are. And just recently, I was given this sample box, and I don't know if you can see it in there, but it's one of the tracking devices. So when people ask about the tracking devices, when they want to know about how do you find out more about bats, how are scientists following them, you can show them this with the little wire and the tiny transmitter that gets attached to the bat, and how obviously it would easily fall off. This is another useful tool. It's a skeleton of a fairly large bat, but it serves its purpose, especially if you're dealing with adults or children who understand a bit of human skeletal physiography. It has the fingers that you can point out here easily, the shared rib cage. the shared feet. You could talk about the knees bending backwards, how small the skull is, and then if you look at how small the skull and the rib cage are, you can talk about how small an opening the bat needs to get into a house or into this cleft in a piece of rock. So this is also helpful. It's basically unbreakable. The other boxes that I held up, they have glass in front. You wouldn't want them to be tossed around, but this can withstand quite a bit of abuse. Depending on the focus of the presentation, these props might be used, all of the props might be used or only a few of them, and they can be used in a different order depending on what the point of the presentation is. One that we like to do just to have some conversation at the end after we've presented about the facts and amazing attributes of bats is how they are threatened by humans. And we have a series of pictures which we can hold up and talk about destruction of old buildings. These are just photos that we got off the internet. This is the only one we had at the time of a bat and a cat, and the famous white nose syndrome picture. Yes, we could have a PowerPoint, but this allows us to, with these handheld props, to set up where there's no electricity, and you can gauge what the interest of an individual is at an information table rather than asking people to gather at a certain point, watch a 10-minute PowerPoint. So that's why we focused on these, and they're also really handy in a classroom of children where attention is at a premium. If you're having a conversation with a parent or a landowner and there are children around who are distracted and perhaps threatening some of your delicate items on your information table, you might think about having a small costume for them to dress up and run around in that is either virtually indestructible or not consequential if it is destroyed. When we do talk to adults primarily, we can make a little joke about tequila and bat-friendly tequila when you buy it in the liquor store, and of course it would only contain water if it contained anything at all. And I didn't even have a tequila bottle, so I made a label which is getting a little old. It says Sheila's Tequila, and I don't know who Sheila is, and it's not a good representation of a bat either, but something like this and a basket of fruits that bats pollinate in the southern hemisphere is also a good conversation generator. At some point, you want to talk about what bats in our region eat on a regular basis, and we have a basket that contains a strange collection of various insects, and we will select people from the classroom or from an audience, ask them to reach into this basket and pull out something. So this is a winged insect. We can talk about butterflies and moths that bats might be able to eat and how they do that, how they rip off the wings and munch on the meatier parts. Grasshopper, I just dropped a little dragonfly. And then just for fun, we didn't find in the thrift store any scorpions. I'm sure there are, but this one we made out of pipe cleaners to talk about the bats in the Okanagan, but just to generate some discussion about the fact that they are insect eaters, what insects they might eat, and then if there's an age that they can accept this information, then we can talk to them about how important they are in agriculture and in forestry by eating the pests that are there. What we really like to do is some talking and some game activity. And some games are easily done by adults. Right away, if somebody comes to your table or comes to your presentation, they are open to learning. And so you can actually push the envelope as far as reaching out to them through animation and games. Whereas if you are presenting to a group of unknowns, perhaps a bunch of landowners who've invited you to come, you might want to judge how you're going to present and what things might be considered inappropriate. So my costume, which works really well to attract people to an information table or is a quick engaging tool in a classroom, might not be appropriate if you're dealing with, as I mentioned before, a group of landowners. So we have a couple of games that we really enjoy doing. And when I'm saying we, I'm referring to Donnelly Ringer and myself, because we worked together up until very recently when she retired from this project. And she made many of these props. She's amazing. This is a simple matching game. We took a poster, the Bats of the Pacific Northwest, which has photos and little bits of fact written on them for each of the bats. And depending on the age group, we might hand out the cards, and each card is numbered on the back, and then draw numbers at random. The child who has the card with that number comes forward, and if they can, they will read the information, and with blue stick tack, we'll put it on the board. It's a simple matching game. We also made laminated cards of different bats, pictures that we found in books or online, and a little bit of information about it. And again, it's who has the bat picture, who has the bat information, different ways that you can use that. Let's see if I can get that in better focus. This is a bat cave that we made from a tent. I'll show you. It's a very inexpensive tent. I think I got it at Canadian Tire at the end of the season. It's held up with two telescoping poles, or two poles that fold up easily. Today, since I haven't done it for a while, it took me about 10 minutes to put up, and there is a covering over it that I made from, again, the landscape cloth, some spare paint that I had lying around, and some leaves that I stuck on. And the idea behind this is that we arrange with the librarian at the school ahead of time to get some books about bats, and then we leave this in the classroom. There's some little bats hanging there. I made those quickly out of felt and some googly eyes. And there's a flashlight here to sort of make a sense as if you're actually in a cave. And depending on the age group, we have also left pencils and activity sheets in here. I understand this is fairly well received. We leave it for a week. Once we left it with the librarian and once we left it with the teacher, you can get a couple of kids in there, and they are generally quite respectful. I understand that Donnelly made a few of these, and those are available through the Kootenai Community Bat Project. They're kind of a fun thing. After quite a bit of talking, and when it's time to get people moving around or just to redirect attention from the people that are speaking to some other little activity, we've had a lot of fun for all age groups with the ultrasound game. And for this, you need some sort of smartphone. And prior to your event, make sure your phone is charged and you've downloaded an app. There's quite a selection of the apps that you can look for. Some are hearing tests, and some are called mosquito sounds. There's a lot of them on the web. Then you ask an insect, somebody to wear a blindfold as an insect, and someone to wear a blindfold who is the bat. And you can have a couple of insects, but it's easier if you just have two. You kind of keep control of it. And the older people, and I mean pretty much from age 20 and up, they have limited hearing in the high frequencies, and children can hear quite well in the high frequencies. And so you can start by, and you have to explain that this is not ultrasound, and so you have to be really clear about this. This is just an activity that's fun. So what you do is you put your phone up and you press a couple of the frequency buttons that are on the app and ask people to raise their hand if they can hear them. And at first, lots of people will hear them, and then there'll be fewer and fewer. And so you can sort of use that to explain that there are sounds in the environment around us which we cannot hear, or many of us cannot hear, and that those are similar to ultrasounds in the way that we can't all hear them. But this is not ultrasound. And so then you stand behind the bat, and the bat is an adult who cannot hear the sound, and you hold the phone there, and the blindfolded insect can hear the ultrasound, and so they are moving away from the bat as the bat is sort of flailing around blindly trying to catch the insect. So in those cases, safety first, of course, you form a circle of other kind humans who will keep this game somewhat contained. And as I say, it has its limitations. It's not ultrasound that you're dealing with, but it does make a point. It gets people up and moving. And the Kootenai Community Bat Project has a number of games to offer to do that, where there is some fact or principle that you can then reinforce with the game. Some graphics that are in booklets are really useful to pull out and have available to stimulate discussion or to hold up for an example. This is one of the pages that we thought was important. We had it blown up and laminated, and although it may have changed a little bit, it is still a very useful tool, and it has been handled by a lot of people, and no destruction showing yet. As a bat ambassador, we tend to get a number of things that are pre-made. This is cute. I have seen some bat ambassadors begin their talk by cuddling this rather large and a little bit menacing stuffed bat, and presenting it as a baby that is unthreatening, and beginning the presentation like that. And for some reason I have two of these now, and they are awfully cuddly. I would love a bat like this as a pet. I also have this smaller one, which I suppose you could even use if a child was really reacting. You could offer them this. It's not within the normal size range of a bat that they might encounter, but it is it's cute, it's cuddly, and it's not threatening at all. Another pre-made thing that you can have is something like this hanging up to attract people. This photo of a pizza box pile represents what an average 11-year-old child would eat in fully loaded large pizzas if they were to eat the equivalent in pizzas that a big brown black bat would eat in insects during the course of a night. Now, sometimes, depending on how we feel, we might say that that is what they eat in mosquitoes, but just because up here in Golden, our mosquito situation is amazing. But it is an interesting way, yet another interesting way to explain the value of these tiny mammals. When you're talking to people about the typical single-chambered bat boxes that we make in workshops, it's often really difficult for them to understand how the bats fit into this. And so Donna Lee made this out of cardboard. It is just out of cardboard, so it's super easy to hold. It again, it's representational, but it has served to get that aha when people see this. So it has the basic pattern, more or less the right dimensions. It has a little bit of net fabric here to represent the roughing of this landing pad. And as you can see, she's made the cutest little bats to show that they come in here and register their feet on whatever rough edge the back is. Again, this still has some of this net cloth, and it can be a very simple explanation, easy to carry, still large, that helps people, particularly adults who are working on these, to understand the concept of them, because we found people just couldn't figure it out. They thought maybe that the bat box needed to be oriented sideways or upside down so that the bats could fly in. So this is a simple tool. It's just straight edges and glue, and it has been, I find, really quite effective. One of the tools that we don't use all the time is an infrared camera. We raised funds for an infrared camera a couple of years ago, and we have used that when we've gone to see homeowners. You can hold it up to a bat box, and if it is occupied, you'll see the red and the color signature change. And it is fairly effective. I'm not sure if it's worth its funds and how much it costs if you're going to be having a fundraiser to buy it or not. But it can be particularly helpful if you're looking at different bat boxes and trying to figure out if they are occupied for bat emergence counts. But I think it's $300 to $700. So you have to be very clear in your mind what you're doing with that. In conclusion, even if this is how you feel, sometimes even with the best laid plans, enjoy your bat ambassadorship.